So first, of course, we want to thank Gary for all the support. In my 21 years at the factory, Gary's been pretty much a staple there.
I appreciate the office space you gave me.
Yeah, he has an office with a window. So in that time, I've been able to see, what he's been able to do to help our business grow and maintain. I've been fortunate enough this year to actually join the board. So in my limited time, I'm actually able to see the contributions that the chamber does much more wide. So very well done, Gary. Thank you. Assemblyman Jones and Senator Steck, we appreciate the support that we get from the local government as well, as all of our projects are government. You guys are crucial, so we appreciate the support. As for the factory, currently right now we do have two projects that we're working on. One is for San Francisco, which finishes up in about a year and a half. We also have a New Jersey Transit contract where we actually just turned a prototype car into its final testing, which is basically the next 10 years of our factory. It is a critical rail car, and they're intended to be built right here in Plattsburgh. So this project, we've actually expanded the factory. We've added in about 100 jobs in the last 18 months. We plan on doubling our production rates within the next 18 for another 100 jobs. So continued job growth right here in Plattsburgh. It's fantastic. But I think the key is, as I mentioned, we do have one project that ends in about a year and a half, 2 years. We're a New York company. Like, the intention for Plattsburgh has always been to build rail cars for New York for the MTA. So what we're excited for is the future. There's a lot of opportunity in New York, and we want to make sure that our facility is a corner for the MTA. Thank you.
I speak to the MTA frequently. They don't necessarily appreciate that, but I speak to them frequently. And we also want to acknowledge the generous sponsorship of our friends at Mountain Valley Federal Credit Union. Thank you very much. A round of applause for their sponsorship. With that, we're going to turn to our two friends. I'm going to call on each of them in turn for some opening remarks, and then we'll get to some questions and answers, beginning with Senator Dan Steck, who continues to be a great representative of ours and a very visible and engaged friend in the New York State Senate. Dan?
Thanks, Gary. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. As you all know, we're March 1st now, so we enter what's known in Albany as our own version of March Madness, trying to get ready for the budget, and the hearings are complete. In the next couple weeks, the process will go that the Assembly and Senate one house budget resolutions will be prepared, and then basically the remainder will be the what's been known as three people in a room, kind of back and forth negotiation to try to take those three plans and meld them into one. So right now, I think it's important to just remind everyone that what you've seen in the paper, what's been reported, that's just been the governor's opening salvo. So there's, like anything else, there's stuff in there that's great and stuff in there that might be concerning to many of you. And then the good news is that the Senate and Assembly will probably in some ways make that a little better and a little worse. And hopefully with a little effort, we will deliver an on-time budget. Last year we were about a month late. I think this is going to be a challenging budget year, and a lot of this is related to the post-COVID hangover that I think is just lingering over the entire country. It's a stone in the pond, and the ripples are still making their way to the edge of the pond when it comes to COVID and funding and some of the way that funding was handled. A lot of one-shot money was infused into a lot of state governments by the federal government. That spigot has been turned off. Every state government handled that a little differently, and I think New York's handled it in a way where there was like an expectation or an anticipation that this money would continue to flow. So that reality is setting in now, and so now you're seeing a reaction to that from the governor in hers. I think what's most concerning to, I think, all of us locally, I know there's some educators in the room today, the change to the foundation aid that the governor's proposed. I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth, but I know Billy and his house as well as I think I possibly can. And I think that both houses and both sides of the aisle are also very concerned about the change to foundation aid. That would take roughly half of the upstate school districts would see less money in that formula. Whether or not the formula should be changed or not, that's a worthy conversation to have. The way the governor did it is she decided to go absolutely cold turkey. We're going to make this change all at once. And again, it would be about a reduction for about half of the school districts. I've got 48 school districts in my Senate district, and exactly 24 of them would see less money under her proposal. I don't expect that to be the final where we land, but anytime an idea is on the table, you have to react to it and you have to be concerned about it. The migration issue in New York City has placed a large demand or a lot of pressure on Albany for assistance. We all may have different feelings about how we got here, what we should do from here, but the reality is that is a major factor in Albany and half the legislatures from New York City. So they're concerned for all politics is local. So it's about it's trying to strike that balance. On the one hand, we want to be good partners and realize we don't live in a bubble here, and that there's a crisis in New York City. And like I said, maybe there's criticism and partisan criticism that will can be shed there. But it is impacting what resources will be available or what our taxes will do, what we can do here. One of the ripple effects from all that is a reduction in the CHIPS funding. The governor's proposed a 10% cut, $60 million to CHIPS. We will all fight back for it, especially those of us that are upstate, like Billy and myself. We do every year. It's a dance that we do. But I spent a little bit of time talking about CHIPS because I think a lot of, at a chamber event and, talking about, answers to questions that I think we're going to be taking up later. I think one of the best things we can do to make ourselves more attractive in a housing market, to be to provide more affordable housing, or to be more attractive to our current employers that we want to respect. We want to also chase new employers, obviously, but I always hear from people saying, hey, why is the state putting so much money into chasing new? What about those of us that have been slugging it out for decades? I get that, I respect that, but the rising tide that lifts all boats here is what we do for our infrastructure, whether that's roads and bridges, cell and broadband. These are all things that affect the value of our homes, the affordability for businesses here, the competitiveness. So infrastructure might not be exciting to talk about, but on a $230 some odd billion budget, $600 million for CHIPS per se, or maybe some funds that go back into our local schools. We're not talking about billions of dollars in these instances. We're talking about still a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, but again, on a scope of a $230 billion budget. I'm not saying that we need more money. I'm saying that we have a lot of money in that budget, and it's about setting priorities. And so I think for the next month, that's what Billy and I will be doing our best down in Albany with our respective conferences and houses, is to try to just make sure that there's some semblance of fairness and common sense. You just don't want to throw money away because it's a good political statement. We got to spend our resources wisely and respectfully. So that's what we've got in front of us, and I appreciate everyone's time. I'm looking forward to some questions. Thanks, Gary.
Very good. Thank you. Next up is our good Assemblyman Billy Jones, and I can't avoid taking every opportunity like this to cite the amazing support we received via Billy for much of the work of the Chamber, particularly everything that we do with NAMTrans in support of our transportation equipment companies and everything we do on the Quebec, New York front. And thank you for that. Let's hear what you have to say this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day month. Wear my green. It's March 1st. Let's get ready. It's great to be here. The unfortunate part for you is that with Matt not here, you get to hear more from Dan and I. But it'll open it up to hopefully a few more questions and concerns that you have, and that's what we're here for, really. I don't have a lot of fancy graphs and such that our town supervisor and mayor and the county had a couple weeks ago when you were standing here, so I'm just going to talk about myself. What did I do in the past year? Traveled a lot around the district. went to a lot of businesses, went to a lot of organizations, had a lot of meetings. Let's talk about my personal life. Traveled a lot around the district, went to a lot of meetings, a lot of businesses. But more importantly, as Dan said, we are in the budget season. I think he hit on a lot of the major issues that we're dealing with. Education, there were cuts to education. We realize that. I'm pretty confident that both houses can make up for that. We talk about a foundation aid formula, and probably not a lot of you in the room know what the heck we're talking about when we talk about that. It just means that it's a very complicated, screwed up, where are educators? Where's Mark? Yeah. Complicated, screwed up formula that we just can't seem to ever get right. But I think we're going to make up for the losses and hold our school districts harmless in that. I'm pretty confident in that. Healthcare, we had mentioned, yes, our hospitals need support, they need help. We see the rising cost of not only, healthcare staffing, everything related to the inflation costs that we're having. They need help. We need to get more and proper Medicaid reimbursement for them. I see Michelle over there shaking her head, yes, absolutely. But you have the key elements here that we're going to talk about: education, healthcare, infrastructure that Dan had hit on, child care. You see my daughter over there. I'm having an issue with it today, but she loves to be here with all of you. Housing as well. And when we talk about housing, housing's a huge issue. It took up a lot of the oxygen in the room last year. The governor came out with 5 to 7 major initiatives that she wanted to see. She didn't get very many of those initiatives through in the final budget. It was a calamity of stuff. We had the suburbs not liking this. We had locals not liking the zoning effects. We had the city not liking the development portion of it. So I think she's really going to push on that this year. And you know what? When you don't get something that you feel is needed, and it is needed, you're going to come back and go at it again. So that's, as Dan had said, I don't think it's going to be an easy budget year. There's nothing that really sticks out and says, hey, this is, but housing, believe me, is a major issue. It's a major issue in the cities. It's a major issue in the suburbs. It's a major issue here. We have our own little housing issues here. And talking to a lot of the realtors and developers in the room, it's a matter of housing stock here that we have in the North Country and Adirondacks. When you're talking about people in New York, it's all about rent cost, right? The average person, they're talking about rent, or developers. They see these, and I've been down there, believe me. You see these major, major developments going on in Brooklyn and Manhattan, where they're rising, 80, 100, 120-story buildings, but they're all high-cost buildings, high-end buildings with big development. And that doesn't help their situation when their average citizens are trying to pay their rent. So my point is, there's a lot of different issues when you come to housing, and I think Gary touched on it, along with he and other key partners in the Regional Economic Development Council. They're coming up with a great housing plan to try to get us some more housing stock here. You talk to anybody in this area, and they'll say, one, we can't find a house or an apartment that's decent, and two, when we do, the cost is up. So when your stock is down, I don't have to mention this to any of the business people, the cost is going to be high. So we need to really help out in that situation. We have different needs in different parts of this state, but I think as Dan had mentioned, we're looking out for the North Country and the Adirondacks and our needs here. It's a very difficult issue when you're talking about so many different aspects of it throughout the state. Other than that, what else do we have, Gary? What else is going on in the budget? I mentioned education, infrastructure. Oh, MTA. Yes, MTA, of course. I don't need to stand up here and sound like Gary Douglas, but a major component of our economy here in the Plattsburgh region in the Plattsburgh region deals with, transportation manufacturing cluster that we have. And I heard again when Gary was down talking to our Canadian partners, we have 10 to 15,000 people a day that wake up every day and work for a company that is out of Canada, our neighbors and friends from the north. A lot of that deals with the transportation manufacturing cluster. Been down, I've seen the MTA, met with MTA officials. My first year in the assembly, they said, "Why are you so concerned about the MTA?" I said, "Because Gary Douglas has educated me so well in knowing that that is a big job creator here in the North Country. It's very important to us." So it is a massive, the largest transportation infrastructure that we have here in North America is the New York City and New York MTA. It is huge. So when people say, why are we dumping all this money in there? And of course, in any big major organization, there's going to be waste, but it does benefit us here in the North Country. We make buses, we make carts, we make transportation for people to get on. So that's very important to us as well. Also working on the Canadian, New York partnership. I'm the task force chair for New York Canada Task Force Relations, and it's extremely important. We had some friends down last week. Gary was there for some meetings. They met with all of our major leaders. We had our Consul General to New York, Tom Clark, there. Dan, we had a reception. The governor came by. We're trying to get people involved to see how important this relationship is. And as you all know from being at the chamber here, how important this relationship is and that we keep it that way. We had great talks about critical minerals and energy, and I see Serge over there from Hydro-Quebec. Very important infrastructure projects that we have from our friends and neighbors to the north. We can never forget about that relationship and how important it is to this region. Tourism, commerce, all the above. So I'm going to be quiet for now and let Dan answer all the questions. Usually we try to let Matt do that, but he's not here. And we want to hear from you, honestly, your questions, your concerns, everything that's important to you. And I want to thank the Chamber and Gary and the staff for everything that they do to put these on. I feel as though they're very informative to Dan and I. We get a lot out of it, and maybe you can even tell us what the heck to do in this budget season that we're coming into. But certainly I think you have a couple of fighters here for you in the North Country, and certainly my door is always open. Thank you. Staying right up here.
Dan?
Did you bring your cheat sheet?
All right, we now turn to questions and answers to allow time for hopefully more questions than we'll have time for otherwise. Those of you who have been here in the past or know that you know what I'm about to say. I ask that your questions be succinct and to the point. We don't filibuster here. You can get elected to the U.S. Senate if you want to filibuster. So minimize the time, get to your question, get it posed. And I know my two friends are going to be very succinct in their answers as well, so we can, again, fit in a few more questions. I see a hand in the back up.
So I had watched the governor's budget address, and she specifically said a lot of initiatives, a lot of extra spending, keeping the reserve in place, but then she said they're building in a deficit, continued deficit year after year. That's what I heard, so I don't know if you heard the same thing or seen the same thing, but can you comment on that aspect of it?
The comptroller of DiNapoli, right before her address, said that, I can't remember, it was the next 2 or 3 years, we had a $12 billion budget gap, or thereabouts. That's not unusual. I'm not saying that that necessarily should be comforting to you all, but I mean, that we seem to always be lagging and chasing that. So there is a budget deficit. But now with that said, her proposed budget balances, if you will, and she's not proposed any new taxes, and I can't promise that that won't change in the next month. But But there is a budget gap, and Comptroller DiNapoli pointed that out and cautioned the legislature right around budget time, beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a good question when you're talking about it. It gets very complicated because we have, well, New York State government's a little complicated if you don't know, but we have capital, we have budgets from year to year, as Dan had mentioned, there's always a gap there, and then we have reserves. The governor is touting on one hand, I don't know what the comptroller's numbers on this, we have like a $16 billion reserve right now. That's rainy day fund, that's good. But over when you're talking about capital, we have debt there. It goes year to year, we keep paying on that. And then you have this budget year. We have to close a little bit of a gap in this budget year. She has taken a little money from the rainy day fund to do that. So I think what you're hearing is, yes, there is debt, but from the year-to-year budget, we're in decent shape. I'm not saying we're in great shape, because I never do, but we're in decent shape right now. But we always carry a debt. We always carry a debt on capital costs and for running costs. I don't know if I confused you even more so, but it is a little more complicated when you look at it. She also took $500 million out of the rainy day fund reserves to pay for the migrant crisis they're having in New York City. You know what? My thoughts on that are, yes, New York City does need the help with the migrant crisis that they're having right now, but migration has always been a federal issue. New York State taxpayer dollars should not be going to it. I understand what we have to do, but I'm saying overall, this is a federal issue, and the federal government needs to step up and help us out with this through policy and through funding.
So I guess I just want to say, I appreciate you trying to balance out her extra initiatives and that particular state.
Yeah. If I confused you, that's how I feel in Albany quite a bit. So.
You always confuse me, Billy. I'm going to start over on this side of the room, work our way across, and see where the first hand is up. Justin.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Childcare, kind of my annual question to you all. We hear from all the major manufacturing and regular industries of people that are trying to bring people to our area. Hundreds, Norsk, Schluter, Alstom. Families, their first question when they get here is around childcare. We get calls all the time. This is part of economic development. If we want to increase our industry, if we want to increase the area with families, we need to figure out a solution to reduce the cost of childcare. We know that cost. We're the leader in this area, not only here, but in Saranac Lake and Malone. Childcare is expensive. We're trying to pay our counselors, our teachers more, because they deserve it.
Yep.
But we're just passing that cost on to the families, and we've got to figure out a way, and we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned the issue, though. We've got to pay our child care providers a great wage, but we have to reduce the cost of the families. It's not easy. Yes, I realize that. Child care is expensive. That's why we always push for more supplemental from New York State, because I do believe, as you've just mentioned, child care is economic development, child care, along with infrastructure, housing, everything. We used to sit in these silos, right? Child care's there, transportation's there, okay, housing is here, infrastructure is here, and then we have economic development. We get to have these great conversations with Gary and that's economic. No, it's all economic development. Child care, transportation, housing. Because if you have a company moving into this area, which we always want, and the chamber, along with its partners, work very hard to do, if there's not housing, if there's not child care, and there's not transportation, you're not going to have any workers. You know what you have with a company with no workers? You don't have a company. So certainly those are all challenges. What we're trying to, and I don't want to get into the regulations too much, Justin, but I think there can be tweaks in there. but I don't know how much we're gonna be able to honestly reduce what it costs to put childcare up. The best solution that I can come up with is funneling it into economic development and making it more affordable for our families, whether that be with state subsidies or whatever. But as you know, the Y runs a great child care program, but we have a lot of those mom and pops that they're very regulated, very restricted, and those regulations all came in a good place. Obviously, something happened, they put the regulations in, but there just seems to be, they seem to be pretty stringent where you can only have, a certain number of children during the day in one setting, or 4, and then 2 and 2.5. I don't know what the numbers are right now. But we should be working on easing up. You hate to say this but we should be helping on easing up those regulations and not penalizing a child care provider for, for minor stuff, penalizing them too much. That adds to their costs as well. But we're looking at putting more supplemental additions into it for child care, to answer your question.
And Justin, I agree with what Billy just said. I want to build on something that the last thing that he was talking about is the regulations for those small mom and pops. I've been on tours in my district with other colleagues of mine from the city chairs of the committees, and they come up and one of the consistencies that I noticed in talking about the child care desert, I think the ratio is 6 to 1. There's like 6 times the demand as there are the seats available. I mean, that's just crazy. And so that's an impediment to business growth and economic development. The COVID and the remote learning and broadband, remote work and broadband, that has taken some of that pressure off, where there are parents now that have a little more flexibility in some industries. But getting back to those small mom and pops, the impediment to opening that, that daycare provider that says, hey, I got the home that I can do this is what I want to do, I can handle a small number of kids, but it's the regulatory burden to get that single person that says, I know how to take care of kids, I want to take care of kids, but they're not a business person, they're not a lawyer, they don't know how to get through all this. And one of the suggestions that had come up would be if there was funding, state funding for like an ombudsman or a catch-all, somebody that is an expert in the regulations, that their job is to bring the regulators together with the would-be provider to make those hurdles smoother and easier with somebody that knows the system and can walk them through it. I thought that was a good idea, and that could be an opportunity where a relatively small investment moves the needle on supply, and then hopefully that would help control costs. But
Yeah.
Want to go over to this side? Don't be shy, folks. Stick your hands up.
Ella had a question. Don't you have that question, Ella?
So she's like, I hate him.
When are we getting out of here?
Yeah, shut up, Dad and Dan.
Yes. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, we have
Oh,
one over
okay.
there. Oh, there's two.
Great.
Yes. The governor has proposed putting it back in the budget, the Fast New York money, shovel-ready. I think it is an excellent, excellent program, because I had the bill.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Which the first year, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Gary, that Senator Cooney and I had the legislation, the bill. I think it was for $200 million. Oh, we had it for $500 million. We were a little greedier, I guess. I believe she put in $200 million. You could see the demand in it was, the applications that came in, because when we're talking about shovel-ready, a lot of people want to invest in a site, they want to invest in an area, but we're not there. We're not there. And I know our town supervisors and village mayors in the room know that to get to where a company will move in or a business will move in, there's a lot of work. And as Dan had mentioned before, when you're talking about sewer systems and water infrastructure, not very sexy, is it? It's not sexy talk. But, we need to have that infrastructure in place. We need to have the broadband there. We need to have the power there. We need to have the, wastewater and water there. So what we're talking about is getting a shovel-ready site, which municipalities, and as Gary had mentioned, Clinton County is working on now, for these businesses and companies so they can say, hey, look, this is what we have to do. We just have to move there. We have to put up a building, we have to renovate a building, we have to be there, which helps a lot. So it's a very important, aspect to attracting businesses, getting businesses, helping businesses out while they come here. So it's a, you know, like I had said, Dave, my short answer is we had $200 million in it. The governor has put a proposal back in it. We'd like to up it a little because the demand was just so great all over the state. It really was. People were like, oh my goodness, we have a site. If we could just make it shovel ready, we could get a business there. If we could make it shovel ready, we could help a company move in here. It attracts companies. It helps the municipalities out tremendously, and it helps organizations out to getting business, getting business to relocate there. And I think it's a great program, not just because it was my bill, but it is an awesome program, and we do have money back in it to fund it. And that's where we're at.
Dan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's about clearing regulatory, and this is a good program, a good idea. We need to be ready. We need to realize that we're competing against neighboring states and other countries and the internet. As far as there's things that are putting pressure on, downward pressure on costs, and New York's got to realize that. So, anything we can do to make the process shorter, and still get, still do what the process needs to do, a good environmental review, good engineering review, but, that we need to be doing more of that.
So I hand over, yes.
Medicaid seems to be a big issue, right? 1 in 3 of the New Yorkers are on it. Now it seems to be more of a primary insurance than, private insurance. It's a large expense back to the counties.
Yeah.
My question, I guess, to get the short of it is, are they going to do away with the tax, the cap for Medicaid at the county level, or?
We're still fighting that, and as you mentioned, last year, the counties took one on the chin quite a bit. There are a lot of us, and I know Dan, that fought against that. He and I both come from county government, so we know the restraints that you're under. Basically, that pass-through money from the feds, the state came in with a plan to swipe it. I think it's a 2-3-year plan now, 3 years, 40%, 30%, whatever. Bottom line, it was unfair for the governor to propose that, I believe, last year. Unfair to put that burden back on you guys. So the cap, yes, we're trying to, get that, because Medicaid costs to counties, they share in that burden. But when we're talking about Medicaid costs for hospitals, and I'm seeing Michelle over there again, we want to see them properly reimbursed for our rural hospitals here. So, but we are working on that, Kevin, and we want to see those costs that you took a hit last year on it. We want to see them stay steady and certainly not increase for you guys in your budgeting. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt the tax cap gets blown by what the state did in the EF map intercept that Billy just referenced. That was over a 3-year period. It'll be hundreds of millions of dollars that will be taken from local counties statewide. And as Billy mentioned, it was soundly rejected by both houses in the one house budgets. Then you didn't hear about it for 2 months because the news was covering 2 subjects during the negotiations. They were talking about the housing initiative that the governor floated that no one liked, and they were also talking about the reforms to bail reform that I think fell short. But that was what dominated the news. You didn't hear anything more about the Medicaid until the 11th hour in May, when we finally had a budget and they rolled it out and we were voting on it within 12 hours. That took hundreds of millions of dollars away from your county. So there goes their tax cap right there without doing anything else. On the Medicaid reimbursement front, looking at Michelle, but we've got, this affects our hospitals, it affects nursing homes, it affects assisted living centers. That the last time that the Medicaid rate formula was rebased was in 2007, and except for last year's modest increase, the Medicaid rates haven't been touched in a couple decades. So you've got places that are trying to provide a service to our elderly, and the majority of them are in upstate are covered under Medicaid. They're not private payers. They're relying on what the government is going to pay, and the government's paying on decades-old numbers. So they're losing money and they're closing. Just a couple weeks ago in Canton in St. Lawrence County, just on the edge of my district, United Helpers announced that they were going to close the last assisted living center in St. Lawrence County. St. Lawrence County is geographically the largest county in the state of New York. They're going to close that, and they're going to relocate about 34, I think, some odd people that are there now. Some of them will be, 60, 70 miles away. That's a burden on families. And the thing is that, from a cost perspective, and this came up in yesterday's lunch in Glens Falls, Carrie made this point, that if you've got a hospital that wants to discharge somebody to a nursing home, and there isn't a bed in a nursing home to discharge to because
Stay in
they've
the hospital
closed.
costs more money.
Right, then, and in the hospital, that's why they're losing money, they can't discharge them unless there's a place to accept them. There are nursing homes that have closed wings because they can't hire the staff to fill the wings, and there's staffing ratios that we put in place for good reasons, right? I mean, you don't want to have one person covering 100 people, that'd be crazy. But there are mandated staffing ratios, and between not being able to find people or not being able to afford to hire people, they're closing wings. So we're losing these beds, and so you've got a backlog, and there's a ripple effect that goes up to the hospital. The hospital can't, and the bottom line is that who would rather be in a hospital than a nursing home? Or who would rather be in an assisting living center than, and the thing is that the more desirable place for us to age is also the cheapest place for us to age. If you can get an aide to come to your home, that's a much better deal than being in a hospital bed. It's better for you, the individual, and it's certainly better for the economics of this, which ultimately is the taxpayer. So, frustrating stuff, and I'd like to see one of the other night, Billy referenced with Canada, the Consul General Tom Clark and a lot of people from Canada were in Albany lobbying, and there was a reception, and the governor came to it. I don't have a lot of interaction with the governor. When I bump into her, I usually get to say hello, and Wednesday night was one of those nights, and she came in, and so on her way out, I got in the receiving line, and I had her for a minute. Now, you might expect, knowing my politics and everything that's going on, there's probably 10 other things you're like, well, that would be a more exciting conversation to have, Dan, if you asked about immigration or money to New York City or electric buses or anything like that. My 30 seconds with the governor was I leaned in and I said, Medicaid reimbursement rate. We need to take care of that. That was how I spent my nickel. And her response to me generally was, we need to find the money. So, but again, like infrastructure, not sexy stuff, but what I've been saying is, an elder.
We're all getting there.
That's right. If we're lucky, we're going to be there, and how would we want to be treated? And so that's the priority. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, and getting onto that, and Dan touched on that. New York State is pitifully behind, and I know we're pitifully behind in reimbursing home health care aides. So, and then we're talking about non-Medicaid funding. These are people that are not eligible for Medicaid. The non-Medicaid funding, every year we try to get more and more and more to give these people a little more at home, because we want people, like Dan said, we want people to age in their communities, age in place, age in their homes. And every year we seem to battle to get non-Medicaid funding for our home health care aides. It's a big circle, right? And Dan had mentioned it. If we keep people in their homes for just a little bit more, instead of having them go to the nursing homes, and he mentioned about the hospital, it's all a big circle. And I don't know, for some reason, we can't convince people or people that are making budgets that if we spend a little more here, we're going to save a lot more here. And Dan had mentioned about people not being able to get in to nursing homes. You know why? Shortage of beds. It's not that they don't have the beds, they don't have the help. And we need to continue to properly reimburse our people that help work there. That leads back to they're staying in the hospital. They're staying in the hospital longer. Hospitals, nothing against our hospitals, but they're not inexpensive to run. We know that. So it's all a big circle, and I think it's pitiful that New York State, and like Dan had said, we're all gonna get there. We're gonna get there at some point. There's a lot of us coming. But if we do end up in a nursing home, we don't have the proper reimbursement to help those nursing homes out. We're 50th. We are embarrassed of this. You should all be embarrassed of this. We're 50th in reimbursables to our nursing homes. In New York State, we're 50. Not a great place. If we can't take care of the people that have done so much for our communities, take care of them in their time of need, what are we saying about our society? I am passionate about this. We're adamant about this. We need to get more reimbursement to our nursing homes, our assisted living, and also our home health care aides that do so much for our loved ones and neighbors. It's pitiful that we can't come up with this.
Thank you, Billy. I got time for one or two more questions. Michael?
I want to first thank both of you for the work that you do down in Albany. I know that we talk regularly, but I think this question may be of interest to folks here because they know a lot of people that work in government. Approximately 25% of workforce in state government and all the way down is about to retire in approximately 5 years. What can you tell us about civil service reform and specifically Tier 6?
Yeah.
What's going on with Tier 6?
Billy and I.
We agree on
yeah,
this.
Yeah, this is one of the many things that we agree on.
Yeah.
We can't hire corrections officers. We can't hire state troopers. We can't hire anybody. And so at the end of the day, it's supply and demand and the price point. I mean, we got to find a way to make it more attractive to want to do a municipal job. And so then that's when you look to benefits package and the Tier 6, I think 40% of all employees right now are Tier 6, and I think it's a much higher percentage for corrections.
It's more. It's over 50% of our workforce is Tier 6 now in the state.
And if you look at, those of you that aren't familiar, I'm Tier 4. My mom and dad are both Tier 1. They're living large. My father is single-handedly killing the pension system. He's 86 years old. He's a retired forest
going,
ranger.
George. Keep going.
My mom, I tell everyone, my mom makes sure he takes all his meds and he goes to all his doctor's appointments. She is riding that horse all the way. But the difference in what they pay in and when you see the statistics, as Michael pointed out, it's staggering, the loss of a back end of the retirement benefits for Tier 6, and they know that. And we're near at full employment, right? So there's a lot of competition for jobs out there, and this goes to the whole CNA and the nursing aides and all that. I mean, who wants to clean up after grandma and grandpa when you can make more or equal or more money doing something much less personal? In Walmart or in a fast food restaurant. So, I mean, you got to look at, hey, we're trying to attract people. We're having a hard time attracting people, and we are going to be up against it.
Yeah, well, Tier 6, Michael, as you had mentioned, it came in 2012, 13, Cuomo. It was a big push on municipalities, actually.
It was 12 because it was before me.
12.
It was.
That's a good one, right?
It was 12.
There was honestly, at the time, school districts wanted it. Municipalities wanted it, county governments, I was in county government at the time. There were a lot of people pushing to get this Tier 6 because they were saying pension costs were costing them so much at the local level. Be careful what you ask for, because I think the cost of not having workers now is costing us dearly. We're not being able to recruit. Tier 6 is you have to work till you're 62, 64 years old now in Tier 6. A lot of costs going in it. Young people, there's a lot of competition for jobs, as Dan said. A lot of employers out there, young people are saying, wow, am I going to work for the next 45 years when Pops over here only had to work for 30 years for the state? I mean, it doesn't seem very, very appetizing. Yes, Tier 6 reform, it always comes up. It's a lot more complicated than it is. Do you put those people back into Tier 4? Because Tier 5 wasn't that great. Do you do this? There's a lot of issues. But now, 12 years later, we have municipalities coming to us, school districts coming to us, everybody's coming to us, fix Tier 6. That's why, you got to, there's a balance, because the cost of not having those employees and not having people apply for jobs is ridiculous. Civil service, it's broken, it's broken. I see Mayor back there shaking her head, it's broken. According to the Civil Service Commissioner, and I questioned him on this last year, I questioned him on it this year at the hearing. Oh, we made adjustments, we've made adjustments. Actually had a meeting with him after the hearing because I nailed him down to a meeting during our hearing. This year we went back at it. Way too long wait times for tests, not getting the tests out, not getting people there, not being able to recruit people to take a test. You know, honestly, my idea was just to abolish the civil service thing, but then they got into, oh, well, you know, it was put in years ago, so you couldn't hire your best friend down the street and you couldn't do all this. Well, we don't have our best friend down the street anymore. We have to do something different here. We don't have people taking these jobs or coming in. So why are we putting an impediment there, civil service, to do that? I nailed him down, Michael. He said there's reforms coming. Reforms are coming. They're coming out with a plan. So we'll have to wait and see what they come up with. And I know at the state level, remind me, county people, what it was that you guys are asking for parity with the state. Kim?
So they did announce at NICEAG actually, Billy, that
Yeah.
the local municipalities are now gonna fall under the state help program.
Help.
So
Got it.
We can actually, going forward, we haven't received guidance yet, but we can have hundreds of titles locally that will not have to take a test.
Yes, so there was a bunch of us that, I mean, they did it on for the state workforce. It's a help program. I couldn't think of it right there, but and a bunch of us were pushing to help municipalities, towns, village governments to be able to get under this help program. They did say at the hearing that it was coming to them. It should help out. He also did say there's more reforms coming. So, because we shouldn't have an impediment for people getting a job. They shouldn't be waiting to take a test for 12 months, wait for the test results for 9 months after that, when you need an employee now. So that's what we're working on.
So I'm wondering too, only because of the city of Albany, my understanding is that, you know, the mayor put a thing on it where if you graduated high school within the 2 years, you didn't have to sit for a specific exam. So I think there are ideas and,
I think there were a couple of people that got waivers, a couple of municipalities that got waivers, and I think they're going to expand that to all municipalities from what you're talking about. Yeah.
At that, I'm going to ask each of you if you have any final remarks you wanted to offer.
Go ahead.
Just everybody, March comes in like a lion. It hit pretty hard a couple nights ago. I know that there's been a lot of wind damage and a lot of people out of power up here. My office is always open. I think I'm pretty accessible, and I know that my staff knows that I keep a sharp eye on my emails and I make sure that we get back to everybody. But I always want to make the appeal. If you're frustrated, you're dealing with a state agency, whether it's the liquor authority, I like to pick on them, or Department of Labor, or Tax and Finance, or whoever you as an individual or your business is dealing with, and you've given it a college try. I mean, like if you said, hey, I called them a week ago, I still haven't an answer yet, I might chuckle to myself. But if it's been like, hey, I should have had an answer by now, and this is costing me money and aggravation, call our offices. That's what we're there for. And I tell this story very briefly. I'm not sure that the world should work this way, but sometimes you just have to accept the way that it works. If you are having a hard time with a state agency and you call us and we call them, first of all, if I try to call the person that you're talking to, as soon as they realize they're talking to a legislator's office, they kick us into a whole different Rolodex. All right, so, we better not get a different answer. The answer should be consistent, but I find that sometimes we get a faster answer, or if something's stuck, we get it unstuck. So, I just think that that's an easy 30-second kind of commercial to just say, use us, because, the difference between one person getting their liquor license and somebody else waiting, it shouldn't be that there's one person said, oh, I know Billy or I know Dan, I'll call them, and they think to call us, and their problem gets fixed. So I'm trying to put the word out, put us to work. That's what we're there for. So if you get stuck, we can be your advocates too.
Absolutely. Just reiterating what Dan said, my office is always open. I see Robin back there. Robin, we're working on DSP. more support for our DSP workers. That's another area we should be embarrassed about, what we're paying our people that care for our loved ones here in our neighborhoods. Want to mention, as Gary had mentioned, IAM. It's a big, the Clinton, obviously Plattsburgh, them moving over to Plattsburgh State. We have the Institute of Advanced Manufacturing over there. Gary Douglas is doing a lot of work on there to get there. We have an opportunity here, folks, to use this facility and to get partners in here, to use this facility in a way that's workforce development, that is going to be a career path for people that want to take advantage of it. We have a big opportunity here, and I know Gary's been, steering this. We have a lot of challenges here in the North Country, tremendous amount of challenges. We didn't even get into closures. We didn't even get into a lot of issues that our institutions are facing here, as he mentioned, along with our business community. But I think forums like this brings us together. You get to talk to people and really discuss your issues. And I want to thank the Chamber for always doing that, getting people in a room, getting them to discuss. We have organizations, municipalities, you have state government, you have businesses, all trying to make the ship go in the right direction. A lot of challenges out there. We're going to be here, helping everyone through those challenges. But I think you all deserve a big round of applause for everything that you do for our communities. And my door is always open, like Dan had said. Thank you.
Thank you to both our guests. Let me call on Joel Wood, our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, to bring the program to a wrap, including recognizing two of our other generous sponsors.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. So as I did last year, and I'm going to do again this year, before I introduce the final two sponsors who made this year's State Legislative Forum possible, I feel it's really important to take a moment to reflect on how fortunate we are as a region to have an event where our state elected officials take the time out of their busy schedules to come together to update us on the important work that they're doing on behalf of us in Albany and answer questions on topics that matter to us. In a number of communities across the state, events like this are unheard of. Believe it or not, and whether it be because there's no organizing entities such as the Chamber to host it, or because of political differences between the elected officials prevent it, these sorts of dialogues and public conversations don't take place everywhere. But they do here in our community, each and every year, and we're lucky enough to have the two gentlemen standing beside me to be here today, and for their tireless work on behalf of our business community. So let's give them one more round of applause. And one more thing, Gary mentioned the staff component at the beginning, that he hires good staff, and I couldn't help but notice a look that was shared between Billy and his staffer Liam. And being a former, and there was a look there, Billy, I saw it. And being a former congressional staffer, I understand how much work staff does behind the scenes. So a round of applause for all staffers, for all elected officials across all levels of government. So as I mentioned, this event would not be possible without our sponsors, so please join me in recognizing them. This organization was a longtime sponsor of our annual State of the County, City, and Town event before coming on board as a sponsor of the Legislative Forum 2 years ago. They're a regional voice for all things real estate, providing a variety of services and education to their members and our state and federal elected officials. As you might have heard, they recently underwent a name change as a result of the merging of 2 local real estate boards. With this merge, their coverage area has grown to now include all of Clinton, Essex, and Franklin counties. We're thrilled to have their support for the Legislative Forum, and it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium Mike Coughlin, Association Executive of ACV Realtors. Mike?
This is not a role I generally have, but I've got 3 things to say today. 1, thank all of you for being part and investing in your communities. As Joel mentioned, we've merged 2 boards recently. We've been serving the North Country for 75 years. Realtors have been part of this community for 75 years. We have one goal: protecting private property rights. That's our pillar. There are other things we do too, but protecting your rights to own property, that's our number one pillar. 2, we're a purple party. We don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, we don't care if you're independent. We support people who support our goals, our pillars. We go to Albany, we go to DC, we lobby. In fact, we'll be seeing these guys on the 27th of March of this year. And what do we talk about? We talk about private property rights. We talk about rent reforms. We talk about things that make a difference in the local communities that we are serving. Why? Because we've been talking about housing for 75 years. And we've been underbuilding housing in the country for the past 50 years. The amount of housing built nationally versus the demand has been incredibly disparaging. It's terrible. People just are not, and I've been an advocate for this for years. We need to encourage builders to build, to make that possible. A lot of that is funding. A lot of that is a lot of things. And the third thing that I'm here to talk about is we are part of this community. In Clinton County alone, we have done something called a charity auction for the past 35 years, helping several community activities and charities. Past 8 years or so, we developed something called the Wish Fund, which is we do a charity auction in the fall and we give out wishes. When we established this 8 years ago, we were one of 2 organizations in the country that provided wishes to adults with a terminal illness. 2. We were one of 2. Little Clinton County. That has grown. We have partnered with the foundation of CVPH. I need your help. After COVID, our wish demand went down. We're great at raising money. Believe me, we've got a great fund balance. We want to give it away. People are not asking for those wishes. So, at the Foundation of CVPH website is a very simple application that you fill out. I encourage you, if you know anyone who fits that bill, it doesn't matter. There's no income category here. We don't care. If you have a terminal illness and you want to do something with your family or with your significant other or whoever, we will hopefully help you do that. We've sent families to Disney. We've sent families other places. We've had one family wanted to bring their family here. We paid for them to come here and they had a pig roast. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted. They wanted to get together and have a pig
Disney
roast.
or a pig roast in the North Country?
Well, it's true. We had one, so I mean, what I need is, we need your help now. Please, just tell people about the Wish Fund and that we are supplying people who deserve to have these wishes fulfilled. People are proud. They don't like asking for help. We need to push them along, and we want to help with that. So thank you for being involved in your communities. There are communities too, and we're all going to be here for another 75 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and ACB Realtors, for all the work that you do, and let's try to make some wishes come true, everybody. So check out the CVPH Foundation website. So this is the first year that our next organization has sponsored the Legislative Forum, but they are no stranger to supporting chamber programming or local endeavors focused on building our industrial manufacturing base. For over 60 years, their mission has remained the same: help businesses grow in the greater Plattsburgh, New York area, and they work tirelessly each day to accomplish this through the management and development of multiple industrial parks, as well as marketing the region to attract new businesses. We're excited to have them come on board as a sponsor of this year's Legislative Forum, and it's my pleasure to welcome now to the podium Dave Champagne, President and CEO of TDC.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here today and sponsor this great event that's been going on for quite a while, bringing this illustrious group together. It's really important that we do hear from our legislative leaders in the state. At TDC, our mission, as Joel said, is really to create space for jobs. We've been doing that since 1961, where a handful of gentlemen started a business putting up buildings to try to bring Canadian companies over to the region. And it gradually emerged to what we are today, a staff of 7 with a board governing us and about 20 facilities throughout the region that house industrial and light manufacturing. We wouldn't be able to do that without the support of the legislators. And everything they talked about today, we hear from our tenants. You know, housing, transportation, daycare, all that's really important. And as our tenants, new tenants come in, they ask about that. And as our tenants grow, they ask about that. So it's really important that we have this space for us to get together and talk about what's important to not just our tenants, but to the region and their support. So I just congratulate them for being open to come in today and talk to us and continue this conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave and TDC. Let's have one final round of applause for all of this year's sponsors. And with that, we'll conclude today's event. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you all on March 15th at the Westside Ballroom for our annual St. Patrick's Day breakfast. Thanks, everybody.